There's the reports also this week suggesting a likely easing of China's trade coercion with Australia, the unofficial ban on Australian coal. But when it comes to Beijing, businesses and officials need to be mindful of the continued strategic battle within China, between China, the United States and other Western democracies. And in the midst of China's domestic economic troubles, the tech world, well, it's decoupling its supply chains with increasing pace. In the military domain, tensions remain, and while the Moscow-Beijing partnership is deepening. So time for an expert to unravel all of this. Joining me now, Michael Shoebridge, the Director of Strategic Analysis. Michael, great to see you. There is no doubt what's going on in China means a lot for Australia, but importantly, what does it mean for Australian business and indeed our consumers?
Well, Gary, I think it's good news to see that Beijing is likely to end some of its economic coercion of Australian businesses. So if coal exports to China resume, that's good news for our economy. And if perhaps, lobsters, wine and barley, if the coercion ends there too, that would be good for our economy. But businesses shouldn't pile back in to the single bet on the China market, because, as you said in your introduction, strategic competition with China between the US and its allies is increasing. And so right at the time we're all feeling good about maybe being able to sell coal to China, we've got a US warship going through the Taiwanese Straits because of the military tension from Beijing. And we've got a big US company like Dell saying it's going to stop making its chips in China by 2024.
Well, and you can understand that diversification has actually been the response out of Australian business, and it's kind of worked, but because there's this war on all fronts, isn't there? This move away from Chinese tech is critical because, everything, iPhones, a whole lot, all made in China.
Well, exactly. We bumped into those kind of supply chain risks with medical supplies during the pandemic, but it's even more intense, the supply chain concentration of the tech sector. So that's why there's so much effort going into splitting that. It just tells us we've got to manage a two-track policy. We should sell some goods to China, but we need to diversify, and we can't expect their coercion simply to go away. They could turn it on at any time.
Yeah, well, China's going to look after China's interests. Australia should do the same, I think. Now, let's move to the US, because talk about looking after your national interest. A couple of US senators are warning the President Joe Biden the AUKUS deal could, in fact, threaten American security by stressing the US submarine industrial base to breaking point. They're worried about their country. They don't care much about us, it seems, Michael.
Well, this letter was from the two most senior people on the US Senate's Armed Services Committee, a Republican and a Democrat. They're heavyweights in the US national security system.
Yeah.
They can either help AUKUS work or help it fail. They've pointed out rightly that the way AUKUS happens with nuclear submarines has got to make more nuclear submarines available, not less. And really, that's the job that Jonathan Mead's task force that's going to report shortly to the government has. How can Australia contribute to increasing nuclear submarine capability, not dragging on the US as a partner?
Yeah, as I said, Australia's got to look after itself. What about the complete chaos in the US Congress? It's what Kevin McCarthy's now been defeated 11 times in the past 3 days. It's the House now has the longest speaker contest in 164 years, leading just up to before the Civil War, for heaven's sakes. I mean, at what point does this just become so embarrassing for the United States?
Well, Gary, it is messy, but then democracy is messy. What did Winston Churchill say? Democracy is the worst form of government we have, except for all the other forms anyone's tried. And I look at the lack of transparency and the failure out of Beijing with controlling COVID, and I think, thank God I live in an open, robust democracy. So if they take some time to settle the speaker and they do it in a democratic, peaceful way, I think that shows democracy's messy, but it works.
I love the idea of glass half full. Finally, you're a strategic expert, and of course, tomorrow is Orthodox Christmas Day. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has decided that Orthodox Christmas should warrant a ceasefire. Is he losing steam in this dreadful invasion?
Isn't it great to see a former KGB communist get so religious now? He's really embraced the Russian Orthodox Church only because it's part of his projection of nationalist Russian power. He wants a ceasefire because he wants time to re-equip and resupply his battered Russian military. He wants the Ukrainian offensive in Donbas that's taking ground from him to pause. Well, why would President Zelensky give this sucker an even break?
Yeah, of course, no doubt. Michael Shoebridge, thank you for your time this evening. We'll catch up again very soon.